recorded, an indication the pandemic could go out of hand if strategic steps were not adopted to manage the inevitable spread of the virus. A presidential order on March 29 saw the total lockdown of the epicenter, Lagos, as well as Ogun and the FCT. 5 weeks later, the figures on the COVID-19 chart signaled that it was safe to slowly open up the economy. A nationwide partial lockdown was instituted on the 4th of May with new sets of guidelines on restriction of movements. And on the first day of June, the federal government further relaxed the rules, emphasizing that enforcement will not be compromised. Our focus on Panorama today is the latest approach towards opening up the economy and social activities without Nigerians placing their own safety in jeopardy. I am Adeola Komiakere. Thanks for joining us. 416 cases of COVID-19 have been reported in Nigeria by the NCDC. 192 cases are reported in Lagos, 4 in Kano, 7 in Katsina, 30 in Kaduna, 2 in Ogun, 4 in Adamawa, 14 in the FCT, 23 in Kwara, 18 in Nasarawa, 17 in Borno, 10 in Oyo, 5 in Abia, 5 in Delta, 3 in Imo, 3 in Ondo, 1 in Niger, while Benue, Bauchi, and Ogun states have 2 cases each. Figures of confirmed COVID-19 cases in the country as at 1st June stand at 10,578, with 3,122 patients discharged and 299 deaths recorded. The Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 has lifted the ban on religious worship but sustained the nationwide curfew as part of new protocols for another phase of ease of lockdown spanning 4 weeks from 2nd to 29th June 2020. Chairman of the task force and secretary to the government of the Federation, Boss Mustafa, says the gradual ease of lockdown should not be misconstrued as the end of the pandemic. Mitaire Ikme reports.
The latest measures approved by President Buhari for gradual reopening of the economy in the midst of the raging coronavirus pandemic are a mixed bag of protocols for cautious progression into the second phase of the national response to COVID-19, and will be subject to review after the next 4 weeks. The nationwide overnight curfew remains in place from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., but banks are now to commence full operations with all precautionary guidelines. Domestic flights will resume on the 21st of June 2020, while there will be restricted reopening of worship places based on PTF guidelines and protocols agreed by respective state governments. The ban on interstate travels remains in force, except for movement of agricultural produce and other essential services.
This is still a fight for life, and our advancement to phase 2 does not mean that COVID-19 has ended. It is still potent and highly wasteful of human lives. Majority of the confirmed cases are in a handful of local governments in the country. 20 out of the 774 local governments nationwide account for 60% of the cases.
Still on the latest measures, schools are to remain closed until further evaluation by experts, while hotels can reopen, but precautionary measures which include mandatory provision of hand-washing facilities, use of face masks, temperature checks, and observance of social distancing.
For government offices, they can open between the hours of 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., so no change in opening hours, but can work from Mondays to Fridays. However, only persons that are within the grade levels of 14 and above at both the federal and the state government level will be allowed to come into work.
We must start in a very orderly, organized, safe, efficient manner so that we will achieve the intent and purpose of air travel.
There is nothing we are doing from this point that is punitive in any way. Once the schools are safe for our children to return to, I will be more than willing to quickly get the ecosystem working again.
The Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 says the pandemic is far from over and cases of coronavirus in Nigeria will continue to rise, but that the latest decisions were cautiously taken to ensure a balance between saving lives and saving the livelihoods of Nigerians. In Abuja, Mitaire Ikben, NTA News.
Meanwhile, our correspondent, Mitaire Ikben again, spoke with the National Coordinator of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, Dr. Sani Aliyu, on the new guidelines.
Schools, it's a pragmatic decision. We are more concerned about those that are about to graduate or certify or move to the next level, and because we don't want that to impact to affect the subsequent academic year, that's why we are trying to at least make some accommodation, and we've asked the Ministry of Education to come up with a policy and work with the schools. When it comes to religious places of worship, just to make it very clear, we are not opening up completely and normalizing things. It's still very restrictive. They have to abide by guidelines issued by PTF in terms of the non-pharmaceutical interventions, and the state governments will need to work with religious authorities to have a system that will enable us continue to protect our most vulnerable. Remember, who are those that go to religious institutions, places of worship? A lot of them are above the age of 60, and these are the people that are most at risk of severe illness. The message we want to send out is that even though people are talking about relaxing, this thing is far from over, because as you can see with the NCDC numbers that are coming up, we are far from reaching the peak of this epidemic.
As another phase of the eased lockdown takes off this Tuesday, experts are optimistic that the additional measures introduced by the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 will yield expected results. Jennifer Igwe reports.
To check the spread of the deadly coronavirus pandemic, a total lockdown was inevitable for states like Lagos, Ogun, and the FCT. With strategic guidelines and measures in place, a gradual easing of the lockdown was introduced for 2 weeks. Although the nation is still in the eased lockdown phase, the transition from a period of limited economic activities and stringent restrictions to vibrant commercial endeavors and freer movement has impacted businesses and lives of people in a fast-paced city like Lagos.
It has increased the level of economic activities. Quite a number of people have gone back to work, and they have been able to at least find their bearing in terms of sourcing for their means of livelihood. So it has had a lot of impact. It has reduced the social tension, especially in a place like Lagos.
The gains are not just on commercial activities, but health and efforts to tackle the deadly pandemic. The Director General of the Nigerian Institute for Medical Research, a testing center for COVID-19, says more people now submit themselves for testing.
Before the lockdown, we were doing an average of 30 tests a day, perhaps because people were not able to move around freely. But since the ease of the lockdown, we are now doing an average of 120 to 130 on a daily basis.
Olaito Jacob Abanga says the gradual easing of the lockdown phase has taken the edge of the usual stress and hectic lifestyle of workers in Lagos.
But right now, work can be shared in such a way that some people can work remotely from their home, while some can come to office to work and all that.
As phase 2 of the East lockdown commences with a broader scope for businesses and more guidelines to ensure safer socio-economic activities while improving measures to flatten the COVID-19 curve, experts say more positive impacts are likely to be recorded. In Lagos, Jennifer Igwe, NTA News.
The safety guidelines for the new phase of the partial lockdown will impact on the economy significantly and reawaken social activities to a large extent. Here to talk about going forward with safety as the watchword via Zoom is an economic analyst, Shaibu Idris. Welcome to Panorama.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for having me.
With the new set of guidelines for movement and, of course, safety, what changes do you project for the economy?
There are likely going to be quite a number of changes because I think the entire world, not just our own world, which is Nigeria, is going to have a fundamental change. We're not changing. We're now going to be entering into a phase that we are researching, our systems and our ways of doing things, and we are entering into a phase of a new normal. For example, in the workplace, where we have a mixture of people, mostly, in the last 15, 20 years, the workplace offices has been, offices are abolished and there is a general flow, and you have workstations, people sitting down, facing one another, next to one another. These are going to completely change with the new challenge of COVID-19. Secondly, even the way our manner we go about entering conveniences or the offices, you might need to install sanitizers, hand washers, and all that is needed to be done. And much more than that, hitherto, we used to have PPE, that is the personal protective equipment. It used to be limited to factories. I believe the new norm that the world and indeed the working environment will be faced with is every office, everywhere you will see people having to use the PPE, that is the personal protective equipment. And quite a number of other things are also going to come into place. For example, buses conveying staff from their respective homes to the offices and back. They're likely going to be, reconfigured so that there will be social distance between one seat and another. The changes are enormous and they're going to be gargantuan, and they will touch virtually all the fabrics of our life in the next couple of months, and these are likely going to come to stay because science has yet to come out with either a medication that will cure the virus or a vaccine that can prevent mankind from getting the virus.
Okay, Mr. Idris, now, most small businesses, in fact, SMEs, have been ineffective since the pandemic. Do you foresee a boom for that sector?
I think it's a mixture of blessings. Number one, quite a number of the SMEs will have challenges because if they are to meet the new minimum threshold of safety, health safety standards, they might need to incur a bit of additional expenditure in order that they maintain the standard. And this will be a bit of a must for everybody to do because we certainly need to protect mankind. We need to protect our citizens from dying from this pandemic. However, the production of the PPE, the personal protective equipment, is going to be an opportunity for other SMEs. I bet you, during the lockdown, I got a call from a family friend who wanted just a loan of 20,000 naira so that she could use her, sewing machine and buy a bit of clothes to be sewing the face mask. I mean, those are opportunities that Nigerians and indeed quite a number of SMEs, either that are those that are existing or those that might come into being, can cash in. Even the making of the sanitizers, hand wash soap, these are opportunities that SME and entrepreneurs can cash in. So it's going to be a mixture of both the good and the not so good opportunity.
Okay, now, can businesses revert to the old ways of transactions, or are we going to have a more digital approach to operations, knowing that the partial lockdown has given rise to a new normal?
I don't suppose going to our old ways, like I said, it is clear that we are likely going to have a new normal, as we call it. If you look at what has happened during the lockdown, today you are having me via Zoom. 4 months ago, 5 months ago, every now and then we are coming to have discussion, or we have to get out of our respective homes or offices to come to the studio. Today, we now have technology and we can do that. Do you think we will ever go back to every day? People have to come in to your studio, whether in Benin, in Kaduna, or Kano, or Enugu? No. So it's going to be a new normal, and this new normal will be with us for time to come. Remember what has happened to the lives of citizens over the world post 9/11, attack. There is a new normal, and now we've all come to terms with having to pass through one screening for another, opening your bags when you are flying, and then even your shoes need to be screened. So what has happened post 9/11 is going to happen post the era of COVID-19 pandemic.
Okay, Mr. Idris, lastly, the economic losses from COVID-19 lockdown are enormous. Can we recover in no distant time? And how can we expedite growth in all sectors?
Honestly, that is a $1 million question, madam. Number one, we happen to be a country that is monolithic in income generation. All our income comes from oil, and we don't have control in the price of oil. And therefore, government revenue are dwindling. And to worsen the situation, businesses are grounding the whole. Some are likely going to report losses. Some are in quite a number of clients have already declared bankruptcy. This will dovetail into Nigeria. Are we going to recover? The answer is categorically yes. How soon you are the Great Depression of 90s, and then we will recover from the challenges of the depression that we faced in 2008. I believe the world has the capacity, if we put heads together. And when I say we put heads together, I'm not looking at just Nigeria, but the world at large, the G7, the members of the World Economic Forum, the World Bank members, and IMF. We all have to put heads together to find ways that we can help one country to come out of this, because the country, or the world rather, has become a one global village. So what is affecting Nigeria will certainly affect Europe and will affect Asia or Latin America. So there is a possibility that we could recover, but how soon, I don't think anybody can hazard a guess.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shaibu Idris, for your time on Panorama. Thank you. This is Panorama coming to you from the Lagos studio. We'll pause here for a break. More stories when we return. Many thanks for staying with us. The Petroleum Product Pricing and Regulatory Agency has announced a new pump price band of 121 naira 50 kobo to 123 naira 50 kobo per litre for the month of June. The external depot price is now at 102 naira 13 kobo and 104 naira 13 kobo, while external depot for collection is between 109 naira 78 kobo and 111 naira 78 kobo per litre. This development follows a review of the prevailing market fundamentals in the month of May, taking into consideration marketers' realistic operating costs. A statement by the PPPRA advises marketers to operate within the recommended price band. It would be recalled that following development in the global oil market, the downstream oil and gas subsector was deregulated, with marketers now free to import petrol. President Muhammadu Buhari has been formally notified of the intention and desire by the governor of Edo State, Godwin Obaseki, to seek re-election for a second term in office under the platform of the APC. This was when the governor paid him a visit to solicit his support as the leader of the governing party. State House correspondent Adamu Sambo reports.
Governor Godwin Obaseki was in the State House to present his expression of interest form to President Muhammadu Buhari in respect of the forthcoming Edo State governorship election.
As a father of a country, as our president, you just should not assume or take things for granted. I just had to formally come to inform him and solicit his support in my gubernatorial bid. The president was quite warm, was quite welcoming. When I showed him my expression of interest forms, he looked through it and he teased me that he would not have to go through this again, and wished me good luck and assured me of his support.
APC governors, under the auspices of the Progressives Governors Forum, had earlier endorsed Governor Obaseki's re-election bid ahead of the governorship primary election scheduled for this month.
We believe that because of the connection which we have created with our people, we have no doubt in our mind that we will win any elections, direct, indirect, general elections in Edo State. We cannot turn back the hands of the clock. So there are certain things we just must accept and see how we can move forward. Whatever it will take to have peace, whatever it will take not to lose lives in Edo, I am committed to.
Governor Obaseki, who also discussed with the president efforts at containing the coronavirus pandemic in the state, told newsmen that he will do whatever it takes to ensure that the killers of the University of Benin student Uwavera Omozua are fished out and brought to justice.
I'm going back to Benin, and that will be the first assignment. We must track down the killers because it's gruesome, it's sheer madness. This is one reason why I have decided to contest and ensure that we impose a state of order in Edo and get rid of criminal gangs, even if they're in our politics.
Edo State governorship election is scheduled for September 19th, 2020. From the State House, Adamu Sambo, NTA News.
And Sports Update is next.